Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 13, Episode 48. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us here this Wednesday, Steelers Nation. Dave, how you doing?
For a Wednesday, middle of the season, not bad. I wish my back would help me out a little bit here, but that's really the only thing that's bothering me right now. And coming off of a win for the Steelers is always a good thing. It makes the tape somewhat more enjoyable, I think, overall there. And I think yesterday afternoon, the Steelers announced that the color rush, to wear the color rush uniforms against the Bengals. Boy, that'll be some contrast, Alex. Black against white. The Bengals will be wearing their all white uniforms and helmets, and the Steelers will be wearing their all black with gold trim color rush. So that'll be quite the contrast there in what I consider really a litmus test kind of game for the Steelers coming up here.
Your back is so bad, the Steelers have just traded for you. We'll be here.
Yeah.
But no, hopefully you're feeling better. But yeah, that'd be really exciting for a color rush game. You wish that game would have been kept Sunday night, because that's when the color rush really shines, primetime lights. But what can you do out of the Steelers' control? So let's jump into things today. You mentioned the color rush game Sunday, and there may be a Minkah Fitzpatrick wearing a color rush jersey, while we sat here and thought that very little chance he was going to play just after his emergency appendectomy that caused him to miss the Week 10 game against New Orleans Saints. Mike Tomlin, during his Tuesday press conference, said he was optimistic about Minkah's chances to play this weekend, saying, quote, let me find the exact quote here, quote, "We are really optimistic about him. Reports regarding Minkah and his inclusion this week are really positive. I know that he's already been here and running today. I saw him Sunday at the stadium, and Minkah wanted to play on Sunday." So that's top line there. There seems to be a realistic chance that Minkah Fitzpatrick, basically a week after his emergency surgery, will play for the Steelers.
Yeah, that's positive, and we'll have to see how Mike Tomlin, he's going to rely on the medical experts on this. I think at one point he was asked, what kind of specific hurdles, I guess, that Minkah has to overcome before it kind of gets clearance to play on Sunday there. And he just said so many words. You're going to rely on the medical experts and all. And look, I don't think if Mike Tomlin has any doubt about this, he's not going to play him
Sure.
whatsoever. You harken back to, and it's obviously a lot different with the whole Ryan Clark thing and with his spleen and that kind of stuff that happened years ago in Denver and all. But I don't think he's going to have to know that Minkah's good to go, plain and simple. And I think if Mike Tomlin has any question about, could Minkah, have a setback, if it could impact him any way, I think he'll hold him out. My gut, and my gut's been wrong about several of these injuries this year, even dating back to, Tyson Alualu with that knee and all like that. And I forget who else we kind of wondered about injury wise, but my gut tells me that this won't be the week for Minkah. And I hope to hell I'm wrong, because as I stated in the podcast the other day, one of the things I was immediately depressed about coming out of that Saints game was, the fact that, man, I sure would like to see Minkah and really this whole defense overall be healthy and play the Bengals on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to wait and see. And as you said, Tomlin will rely on doctors. And if they do not give Minkah medical clearance, then of course he will not play. That's just the smart and no-brainer thing to do. But I don't know. I mean, for Tomlin to be that optimistic about it, I know that generally he's on the optimism side of the spectrum when it comes to his Tuesday press conference and always leaving lights on for guys. But to have that level of, really positive, he's talking about my gut right now, we'll just have to wait and see. I think he plays.
Okay. Well, one of us will be right and one of us will be wrong.
Yep, and we shall see.
And we'll see. The first injury report on for week 11 will come out later this afternoon. I would imagine that if Minkah does anything, it'll be a limited participation. However, if he does practice full, that obviously would be a good sign.
Mike Tomlin also mentioning 3 other names going through the list of injuries during that Tuesday presser. Kevin Dotson with a hip, Najee Harris with knee discomfort, and Ahkello Witherspoon with the hamstring. Seemed to downplay the injuries to Dotson and especially to Harris, basically saying that it may limit those guys, including Harris early in the week, but those guys should play this Sunday against the Bengals. With Witherspoon, didn't really give any sort of timetable on that, but who the heck knows with the hamstring that's been bugging him for most of the season.
And look, I mean, coming off of that game this past week, Witherspoon going to be hard pressed probably get that starting job back at this point right now with the way Levi Wallace played in that game. By the way, he evidently had some sort of kind of a Bell's palsy type situation Levi Wallace did that he had to overcome. I guess there's an article on The Athletic about that and all. So I think the fact that not only did he overcome that in a week or last couple of weeks or whatever, but had a strong performance on top of that, makes you, and you trade for William Jackson, and that the back injury obviously has him now sidelined for multiple weeks there. It's good that one of those guys are stepping up on that other side opposite Cameron Sutton, and right now the hot hand, I guess, if you would be Levi Wallace.
Yeah, that was a kind of an unexpected article, but a good one from The Athletic. I think Mike DeFabo wrote that. So yeah, pretty crazy story there. Glad that Wallace is doing well and playing well, and that's the most important things you can ask for. I do want to note before we get more into Mike Tomlin, Alex Highsmith has been named the AFC Defensive Player of the Week. Kind of expected that after his 2-sack forced fumble performance against the Saints on Sunday. First time he's ever won the award. First Steeler to do it since Minkah Fitzpatrick in week 1. So kudos to Alex Highsmith, who I thought had a really strong game overall, taking advantage of a pretty bad Saints offensive line.
Yeah, but Alex, 3/4 of that award goes to TJ Watt, right?
I don't have to share it. Yeah, you don't actually get anything for that as a player, do you? There's no money or trophy or anything, right?
I just think it's the recognition. I don't think there's any money. Look. And that seems people right now, and this goes back to our conversation just last, couple of days ago about Alex Highsmith and why people seem to be so split on him at this point. Look, does having TJ Watt playing on the opposite side from you help? You're damn right it does. And I think your breakdown, I think it's up this morning on the impact that TJ Watt had in that game with the, I think the biggest takeaway, look, TJ Watt's TJ Watt, and in so many words, Mike Tomlin said that yesterday, but I think the thing outside of the playmaking, the most important part of your breakdown that you did was the fact that to show how the protection is more times than not slid his way, and how that opens up these one-on-ones, going across the line from there. So does Alex Highsmith benefit from TJ Watt? You're damn right he does. But you still have to win, some of these matchups that are one-on-one matchups. And, Alex Highsmith is doing that when more times than not, when TJ Watt is there. So I don't see how you punish a guy for that. Now, once again, he's not TJ Watt, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's not at that high-end elite caliber type player, not at this point at least. And as you said, and as I did in the video breakdown this morning for Steelers Depot, Watt impacts the entire defense. He benefits everybody: rush coverage, the way the line slides, the attention that Watt commands. But as you just said, Highsmith still has to beat his man, still beat the left tackle and make plays, and he is. So, I mean, there are critiques of Highsmith's game, and when he's faced some really high-end tackles, he's struggled more. You want to see him probably have more quality performances against some of the best tackles in football. But whenever he's facing some guys that he should beat, he's winning convincingly.
Is he deserving of a Pro Bowl games vote right now?
I'd have to look at what the competition is. I mean, from a stats standpoint, I think that he is 8.5 sacks, which is tied for fourth in football, and 3 forced fumbles, which is tied for second in the NFL, tied first among pass rushers. So I usually do a Pro Bowl ballot just to kind of think about it. I haven't done that yet, and I'll give it a bit more time, but you could certainly make a case for it. Would I put him in there? I don't know. He's probably borderline, but again, the numbers certainly give him a case.
I think he deserves a vote at least. I'm not, and look, there's a lot of great pass rushers around the league. Is he likely to win it? We'll see. I think the second half of the season. If TJ Watt, if they're able to get these guys and keep these guys on the field now on the defensive side of football, we should see the sack total start to rise, in the second half of the season. And I think Alex Highsmith obviously can benefit from that. I mean, he's on pace right now for 16 sacks. I think if you do the whole pace thing, and if he hits 16 sacks for the season, it's going to be hard to keep him out of the Pro Bowl voting process at that point. And he's been fairly stout, I think, against the run. Once again, I think the biggest thing with him is just seeing the pressure rates improve some. And really that's all you kind of, I think, hope for at this point when it comes, because he's got a good pass rush plan. He knows what he's doing. You can tell he obviously studies these tackles and all, and they're doing a good job with some stunts and some games over there. And I think with TJ Watt now on the field, it'll allow Cam Hayward and Alex Highsmith to be a little bit more creative, to kind of yin and yang off each other.
Yeah, so I well-deserved award there for Alex Highsmith, and hopefully more to come for him and for this Pittsburgh Steelers defense. To jump back into Mike Tomlin and what else he had to say from a kind of nuts and bolts factual standpoint, Tomlin saying that they'll stick with Matthew Wright to be the Steelers kicker for this weekend against the Bengals. Wright missing a pair of kicks against the Saints. Tomlin also mentioned the operation in general has to be better from a timing standpoint, from a protection standpoint. So not putting all the blame on Wright, but obviously Wright has to make his kicks.
Yeah, he does. And you have to think there's going to be a couple more opportunities for him to do just that on Sunday at Acrisure against the Bengals.
Right. And week one was, came down to a couple of kicks and a couple of missed kicks. And so we, certainly could see this game being close again. And Wright will, I'm sure, probably have an opportunity at some point to redeem himself, and will need to do so. What else did Mike Tomlin have to say in his Tuesday presser that caught your attention, Dave?
Talking about Kenny and, the pressure in the sacks overall. And that kind of matches some of the things that we've talked about. Kenny is getting Kenny in some trouble with some of these things.
Yep. Here's the quote from Tomlin about the 6 sacks, saying, quote, "Sometimes Kenny gets Kenny in trouble, but that's just the nature of being a young guy," end quote. And that's an accurate statement. Look at the sacks. They're not all created equal. They're not all on the offensive line. In fact, heading into this game, I had charged Kenny Pickett for a team high 4.5 sacks on the season. And Trubisky, I had charged for 4. And so most of the sacks were actually coming on the quarterbacks more so than the offensive line. We'll see what the results look like exiting the Saints game. But, when you have a young mobile quarterback, he's going to use his legs, and sometimes that helps. I mean, Pickett had 53 or so yards rushing in this game and made some plays with his legs, but sometimes you run yourself into trouble and, miss opportunities or take negative plays. So you live by the sword, die by the sword when it comes to quarterback mobility for a rookie like Pickett.
You haven't broken down the sacks yet, have you?
No, because there's 6 of them. It's going to take me some time. So that'll be a later in the week thing. I've gone through them and kind of have an idea that I'm going to charge Pickett for at least 1, probably 2 of those 6 sacks, but I have not done that, have not finalized it yet.
All right. I think, and I'm looking at some Pro Football Focus numbers here, and they have 4. Let's see, they have a sack charge to Najee. They have a sack to Chukwuma Okorafor, Kevin Dotson, and Dan Moore Jr. So that leaves 2 outstanding. I'm guessing they charged to Kenny Pickett then. So that kind of matches what you just rolled off there.
Yeah, the one at the end of the half where Pickett's scrambling on a 3-man rush and then runs into Okorafor, I would put on him pretty clearly. And then the other one came later in the game, red zone, just kind of panics a bit and runs around and kind of dives forward. I wonder what the one on Najee is. I don't remember him.
I don't remember that either.
I'll have to go back and check. I mean, I thought his pass pro in that game was actually pretty good, but I'll have to go back and check and go through it snap by snap.
Let's see here. What else do we have?
Let's see. Yeah, pretty, subdued from Mike Tomlin.
Let me wrap up. The good thing is if you do, that for Kenny being a young guy and some of these sacks falling on him, at least you're getting the other side of it, which is him making some plays with his legs, and I think a lot is being kind of centered around what Mike Tomlin said about prudent quarterback mobility. I don't know how you kind of took that. I took it more as and it's less about design runs because they don't have really what have they had? 2 design runs for Pickett all season?
Roughly, it appeared 1 in that Saints game, and maybe, aside from quarterback sneaks in terms of actual design runs, it's probably been 2 or 3.
So I think what Mike Tomlin was getting at there is in so many words, if you're going to take off and scramble, be prudent in your decision making and make sure you don't get yourself smacked.
Right. And then also with the design run aspect, they want to be smart about not putting him in harm's way, especially with that ankle injury that seems to be maybe just bugging him a little bit. And you want to just make sure you're not. That's actually why the quarterback sneak scared me a little bit, because I was like, oh, God, he's going to get a whole pile on top of that ankle. But I think he's kind of stayed clean in some of those situations. Yeah,
and he's made good decisions overall when especially down there in the goal line and choosing the bubble to attack and those kind of things there. So, look, you got to have quarterback mobility and the ability to punish teams sometimes that might play heavy man and have a pass rush to go with it. You have the ability for the quarterback to take off and make some plays with his legs. Oh, what'd you think about? I was able to get Seth from ESPN. The whole the Najee explosive run and Kenny Pickett taking on down the field. He looked pretty damn quick on that. And that's what kind of got me to ask Seth, what's his last name? Walder, I think, from yes. ESPN, because he's got access to all the next gen, player speeds and stuff like that. And I took a shot to see if he could pull up what the top end speed Kenny reached on that, and he did. Kudos to him. What do you put? 19.9 or something? I think. Was it
19.9, 19.1? I think he said third fastest speed Pickett's been recorded this year.
All right. So I thought it's one of those things that make it's kind of meaningless overall. But I mean, there's been times when you've seen Kenny take off with the football and he looks pretty damn quick.
Yeah, he's a good athlete. I mean, this guy. I mean, he ran. What did he run at the combine? 4.6. I mean, he ran well.
I don't remember. Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, he ran somewhere in the 4.6s. I forget the exact time. Let me see if I can pull it up here. Oh, no, 4.73, but still a solid time. He's a pretty big guy. So, yeah, the guy can move. Mm-hmm. Let's see what else from Mike Tomlin talked about. Was asked about the increase in slant routes and said it really wasn't anything intentional. Tomlin really didn't seem to pay it much mind. But to me, I certainly saw a difference in terms of at least completions. They were hitting those yak opportunities more than they have in any game this season.
Yeah, we've gone over the numbers, right? As far as attempted slants and completions, and that number was really, really lacking. So it was good to see that phase of the passing game used a little bit more. Now that gives defenses something else to think about coming off of that game where they threw like 4 or 5 of those in that against the Saints.
Yeah, I was going to ask. I mean, how many? Is there an official number on how many they threw? Does Sports Info Solutions or whatever?
I can get that for you.
Yeah, I don't. We're going to have this conversation again. We're both kind of asking questions and trying to research on the fly. But I just want to put the numbers to it, to how many slants they had completed or targeted, in the first 8 games compared to what they did against the Saints. I imagine the numbers are going to be pretty stark and pretty clear in terms of the increase in usage. From the first 8 games compared to what happened against the Saints.
Let me pull up first against the Saints here.
I mean, now some of those, I don't know if they're going to include penalties on that. The one to Deontay that would have been a touchdown had there not been a PI on the play because the Saints were in cover 0. So I don't know if they're going to count that or not. They should, but I don't know how they categorize those things.
Showing 3 attempts on slants here.
Okay. And I know we had talked about for the season, it was something like 9. I forget what the number was in terms of, heading into that game in terms of slant targets.
Let me pull them up from week 1 to week 9 here on slant.
I mean, it was a lower number, whatever the number was. I can't remember top of my head. That conversation we had 2 weeks ago.
Kenny had only attempted 1.
Wow.
Since he took over. Showing here that Trubisky had 8 of them.
Okay, so it was 9. So you had 9 in the first 8 games, and then you had 3. And do we know for sure if that includes the PI, the penalties, the no plays?
I don't believe they include the no plays, no.
Okay, so you can probably add a 4th onto that at the least. But let's just say 3. I mean, that's a third of the number in one game compared to the first 8. So that to me is a very stark increase.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was good to see, and you would like to see them maybe hit 1 or 2 of these moving forward and actually get some pretty decent yak out off of them too.
You would. I think there were some opportunities. Again, I think the reason for the slants was trying to really go after some of the younger corners, Taylor, Adebo on the outside. And again, had there not been the 1 PI on the Johnson attempt, that's probably a house call for Deontay.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else from Mike Tomlin in this one?
Let's see. What else did he say here real quick? About the, kind of, I guess, more along lines, 2 tight ends and all like that. And that's one thing going back through the all 22 these last 48 hours. Man, they used a lot of they had a lot of plays with at least 2 or more tight ends on the field, something like 29, I think, in total in that game. So they had, a lot of usage of that on the heels of not having Chase Claypool.
Yeah, I think I know the angle, the narrative that the reporter was trying to build on that, but the Steelers led the entire game, or they did not trail the entire game. And when you have a 2-possession lead late and you have good game script in your favor, you're going to be able to go heavy. So I think to some degree there's an increase there. Yeah, that with Claypool being traded, sure, I can grant you that. And this team wants to run the ball well, but they ran the ball 43 times in that game. They've not been able to come close to that in any game this season. Usually they're from behind, they're trailing, they're in passing personnel, 11 personnel. So to a degree, sure. Connor Hayward played the most amount of snaps he's played in a game, aside from the Bucs game, which Freiermuth missed. So I don't really count that. So that was notable to me. But the whole multiple tight end stuff, generally, that I put that more in game script.
14 in the second half snaps. I'm showing according to. And that does not include, I filtered out no plays. I'm showing, I think, 14 offensive plays with 2 or more tight ends on the field in that game. So, and
I imagine most of that, I think Gentry was out there for 8 of the last 10 on that final drive. So they were obviously heavy, I'm pretty sure, for that last possession.
Let's see. When did the final?
23 in the 4th.
He was on the field, it looks like, for 4 of those snaps.
Was he? I thought it was 8. I'd have to go back and check the numbers.
Were there any penalties in there?
I don't know.
Let's see. Let me uncheck the penalty box here. And you said I'm showing, according to Tom's charting here, from under the 4-minute mark in the 4th quarter, I'm showing Gentry on the field for 4 snaps. I'm showing Freiermuth on the field for just 1 snap. No. 2 snaps. And I'm showing Connor Hayward on the field for 1.
So they had plays without tight ends? Because that doesn't add up to 10. That's 4, 2, and 1. Unless it's Wildcat. But even then, that seems weird. I'd have to check the numbers.
What about the victory? I don't know. That was just one play, though, right? Yeah.
I guess. I'm going to post this on Twitter after the podcast. I meant to do it before. Did you watch the victory snap formation?
I don't think I went back and watched that specifically.
You got to watch victory snaps formations in Pittsburgh. I want to know the story. James Daniels was aligned at left tackle, and Dan Moore was at right guard for the victory snap formation. No idea why.
Interesting. Okay.
Totally random. I know it's meaningless. I want to know the story of why James Daniels is James Daniels wanting left tackle money for his next contract, or I don't know what the case is, but really random, really bizarre. Anyway.
Okay, interesting. Let me try to resort this real quick from Tom. Make sure
I could be wrong. I mean, I was just writing about it yesterday. I'm going off memory of what I wrote about the article with Tomlin talking about Gentry and how he's an asset against 4-3 ends because he's a bigger guy and that'll be important against the Bengals. Always a 4-3 team. So I could be misremembering or getting my facts wrong here.
All right. Now you were saying you weren't saying that those were all two tight end sets though, right? Because I had it sorted by two or more tight ends. You were wanting to know with how many snaps with less than 423, right?
Yeah, I think with just Gentry on the field is what I had written about. Okay. So maybe that was 8, and then there were probably somewhere he was the lone tight end out there, I'm guessing. Okay, so that makes more sense.
Okay, yeah, because I had it sorted by personnel groupings here. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 snaps for Gentry on the field from the 423 mark on.
Okay, but it still sounds like they were in multiple tight ends, about half those snaps, whatever the math is. So, again, some of that's being game script of you're in run situations, you're going to put your big people out. And so that's why I don't really buy in the whole they're in multiple tight end sets because the Claypool trade all that much.
Might have to correct Tom's charting here because he's showing the offensive linemen in their proper positions for the victory snap.
Well, easy to. Who would have thought that would have been?
Only you noticed that.
Well, because I saw Dan Moore because he kind of goes to block on the play, kind of puts his hands up.
Be curious and I went
here. I'm like, why? It felt weird to see Dan Moore that far to the right. So I'm like, that just didn't sit right with me. So I watched the end zone view, and yeah, Daniels is at left tackle. Moore's at right guard. Everyone else is in their position. Okorafor, Dotson, Cole. Nothing else is out of sort. But they just flip just for that play. I would love to know the reason why. Just for fun? Is there a story?
Yeah.
But yeah, go back and check that victory formation.
I'm gonna have to look at this real quick here.
It's I know where this is not the hot button issue to talk about after a win, but these are the things that catch my attention when I'm going through the tape late at night.
Let's see.
In that quiet moment there.
Okay, I'm seeing. Dan Moore at right guard, and James Daniels. Okay, I like it.
No idea why.
I like it.
It's funny. Yeah, pretty crazy. Anyway, let's move on here. I think that's probably it from Mike Tomlin. Ben Roethlisberger, 2 editions of the Football and podcast. So we've been extra special for the holiday season this year. I know we kind of rip on the podcast a little bit, not because it's bad. It just creates a lot of work for us to do sometimes in the evening. I thought the conversation he had with Heath Miller was excellent. I mean, it wasn't, obviously that relevant for today's Steelers, but just to have them talk stories about their time together, that was my favorite episode by far.
Yeah, and talking about how Heath would really get on himself anytime he would even drop a pass at practice, and anytime anybody would there'd be any type of skirmish, I guess within practice involving Heath, there were plenty of people coming to the defense of Heath Miller.
Yeah, for sure. And so there's just a lot of great stories. There was some stuff that about Ben, his rookie year, or I guess maybe later in his years because he was there before Heath was, but early on in Ben's career where occasionally Ben would get the play call in wrong and Heath would fix it and sometimes wouldn't even tell Ben it was incorrect. He would just get guys lined up correctly themselves and all that kind of stuff. So they don't make him like Heath Miller anymore, that's for sure. Except I will say, obviously when Pat Freiermuth got drafted, there were so many immediate comparisons to Heath Miller. I don't think that's fully accurate because Freiermuth currently is not the blocker that Heath is. But where I think they really align perfectly is with their hands. And in terms of when Ben talked about how, Heath almost never dropped passes. And whenever he did drop a pass, like everyone started talking about it, all these hushed tones of, oh my goodness, Heath just dropped a pass. That's the same exact thing with Freiermuth. Whenever he drops a pass, it's so rare. Everybody kind of stops and says that really just happened. So from a hands aspect, I think Freiermuth is very much on that Heath Miller level of just incredibly secure hands.
Sure would like to see his blocking get a little better, though. But he is good out in space, and that's something we've noted right from the start with Freiermuth. You would like to see his in-line stuff get better, though.
Yeah, agreed. I think even Gentry's not been as great of an inline blocker this year as I hoped that he would be. Have you kind of gotten that feeling?
Yeah,
too?
yeah. Look, I mean, they're inline, and the few times they've asked Connor to do it, obviously haven't gone well overall. But yeah, they missed that part of 12 personnel, especially when they have both of them, maybe, either on the same side on the inner line of scrimmage, or, a few times maybe where one's on each side of the formation. They miss that aspect of it for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I know Gentry sometimes has some really tough assignments, and he was on 4-3 ends because that's a better matchup for him than, say, Pat. But I just feel like not just in this game, but overall, Gentry has been, I thought he'd be a bit better considering he was a really good blocker for them last year.
Right.
And then with Hayward,
and the running game would benefit from that, obviously.
Sure, absolutely. And then with Hayward, I like the guy. I think he's interesting. I don't quite know where to put him and how to play. And they try one split zone play where he's flowing across and just can't get any sort of push, and the run gets blown up late in that one on a Jaylen Warren carry. So I don't know. I don't know exactly what to do with Connor Hayward in this offense.
It'd be interesting to see what happens post this season. If Derek Watt's not back, can Connor Hayward kind of be asked to, play a little bit more of a fullback role?
I don't know if I want him to. I think he's too small, not strong enough, doesn't block well enough. I think he's better in space. I think he's a good space player to run routes and catch. He's got really good hands. He had that nice catch. We're backed up. Pickett throws to Hayward in the left flat, and Hayward makes a strong hands catch, makes a guy miss, picks up a first down, gives them breathing room. I think Hayward's better in space. I think trying to reduce him to an inline core player is the wrong approach for him.
Then use his butt in the red zone.
Yeah, but I mean, on what, any route in particular? I mean, Kenny seems to have a little bit of a trust factor in him, something more, maybe up the seam or something like that. But because if there's one thing this team needs to get better at, we've talked about, especially Kenny in particular, is he's got to get better in the red zone, man. He does.
He is now. Funny how we segue right at the right times when I have things in my notes here. Pickett right now is 11 of 27. That's 40.7% for 70 yards with 2 touchdowns and 1 interception and 5 sacks from the 20 in. And look, I mean, he's got the red zone touchdowns. I mean, the quarterback sneak touchdowns and all like that. But this is one thing we've noted from really a week or two after he started getting into games, is we want to start seeing his red zone production get better if they're not going to bury the red zone on the run, right? And this is an area that we all need to start watching a lot more closer, especially this week, man, because this, to me, and I'm getting way ahead of myself here. If you get these guys, this defense back on this field this week, this is, to me, and the Bengals don't have a guy like Jamar Chase, and this game's in Pittsburgh, color rush, Steelers by 100, or whatever. But this is a game that the Steelers should have a chance to win, I think. And they're part of them winning this game is bearing a couple more red zone trips.
You ask yourself, how does Pittsburgh, who has the ball for nearly 40 minutes, runs for 217, doesn't turn the football over against the Saints, how do they only score 20 points? There's a couple of reasons for that, but they're 2 of 5 in the red zone, to me, is number one. And you had some red zone sacks and just couldn't finish some of those drives. So, if you're 2 of 5 versus 4 or 5, that's a difference between 20 points and 30 points in a game. And I think that's a big area to improve on for him and for this team.
And I know people will bring up the missed field goals and all like that, but you need to start burying more of those down there, and I think it's up to Kenny to get that done.
Yeah, I mean, obviously 2 missed field goals is, again, one of those many reasons, although I think the 48-yarder is not a red zone trip. I don't believe the math there, or the other one I believe would have been. But you want to be in positions where you're not settling for even field goal attempts in the first place. And of course, you're not going to be perfect. And I don't expect Pittsburgh to have the best red zone offense in football, but they're one of the worst right now, and that has to improve.
All right, take us back to Ben. I'm way on down. I went on way on down the hall here.
Yeah, well, with the Ben and Heath, there wasn't a lot to talk about today, but then Ben had a second episode that dropped yesterday that was Ben and Bob Pompiani of Pittsburgh sports media lore, and Ben talked that because the Heath one was recorded before the Saints game, the one with Pomp was after the game, and Ben had some commentary, as he often does, on Pickett's play, and to be fair and to be clear, said that Pickett played well overall and used his legs well. So this was not maybe as harsh a critique as some of the articles we focused on may seem to suggest. But I thought Ben had interesting comments on Pickett's decision making. Ben talking about the very first play of the game. He says and argues that Pickett should have thrown deep to Deontay Johnson, believes he has him open on a 75-yard touchdown. Johnson running a go route down the right side. Instead, Pickett looks for the crosser for George Pickens and throws incomplete. So what are your thoughts there from Ben on Pickett's decision on that play?
If he completes that to Pickens, are we really talking about it?
Yeah, I was
as much.
I was okay with the decision because he has a wide open Pickens. It's probably more the core of the read there. And if that's completed, then that's at least a 30-yard gain. And I'm just frustrated at Pickett for missing that throw. To me, that was his worst throw of the day.
I mean, I understand, what Ben's trying to get at it, because he even said, even if you overthrow him by 10 yards, maybe you put the defense on alert and all like that. But I mean, you had an opportunity to get an explosive play out of it right out of the chute anyway, while sending a message with Deontay streaking down the field there. So I'm more upset that he didn't put that pass on Pickens there.
Yeah, that was a really bad throw. And some were arguing it was tipped. I don't believe it was tipped. Some are saying the wind, maybe, but I don't really see a lot of evidence to suggest that. But either way, a bad miss. So I understand Ben's point. For me, generally speaking, listen, I'm not one to try to critique Ben. He's the one who's played quarterback and is a future Hall of Famer. I try to focus just more on the throws that Pickett made as opposed to what he didn't make, because trying to cherry pick and say he should have thrown here unless you have a really full or confident understanding of the progression or the read on the play, to me, that's kind of sketchy waters that people get themselves into when they say that he should have thrown to X guy if you're not really breaking down the whole progression of the play.
And look, I mean, that's it's part of the guessing game, though, that we do on a weekly basis.
Yeah, but it's of course easy for us to be able to go back and armchair it whenever you have the benefit of, sitting at home and you're able to stop a play and go back and forth and have the aerial view to it. Quarterbacks aren't, how do you say that word? Omnipotent, in the sense of they can just see it all and know it all at once. There's a progression, there's a read, there's things they have to look at and a structure to the play. So, I understand Ben's point, and to Ben's, as he later clarified, sometimes you can check on the backside of a play, and if you like a matchup 1v1, that you can take it and kind of go away from the structure and the intent of the play. But just as a general statement, I generally dislike the whole he should have thrown it there instead, because it misses a lot of what quarterback play is about.
All right, circling back, what do you think about the opportunity in the red zone that he should have turned one loose there?
That one, the Pickens?
Right.
That you talked about? Yeah, I see what you're saying. I think that's a fair point. The more that I watched it, the end zone view didn't really give me any additional clarity on exactly where the linebacker was, because Pickens never comes in the frame. Yeah, I think you make a good point there.
All right. And the over route that Ben talked about?
Well, just last thing on actually the one to Pickens. I don't know, but it kind of felt like Pickett was about to throw it, and then he gets pressure because Dotson allows the pressure there. So I just wonder if that pocket had stayed clean, if Pickett would have thrown it, because he's kind of rearing back like he's about to. Then I don't know if the pressure kind of forced him to decide to bail on that.
Yeah, I think he should have turned that loose half a second before that.
That's fair. Yeah. On the over route, Deontay's open, and that's one where you could probably more realistically say he should have thrown it there. But again, my focus is always on what Pickett actually does as opposed to what he could have done or should have done. And Pickett just misses the linebacker there. It's play action, so you take your eyes off the coverage for a moment. It's not where he turns his back, but he has his head down to play fake it to Jaylen Warren there, and he just never sees the the linebacker. We call that the linebacker roboting the dig or the crosser, where he's going to basically be able to bail and look for a crosser and get depth and match him underneath. And Pickett actually might have saw that at the last second and then kind of intentionally threw a really bad football to make sure that it actually was not picked off.
The hope is that the more games he plays, the more things that he sees, the more comfortable he'll get, the more he'll start pulling the trigger on some of these throws.
Yeah, I'm pretty critical of Pickett in this game. I understand he took care of the football and didn't make any major errors, but my terrible take today is the circumstances were set up so well for Pickett in this game. They're off a bye week. They had a chance to regroup and reset. They're at home. They're playing the Saints, of course, on the road. Short week, ton of injuries along the D-line at linebacker, plenty of them in the secondary. Your receivers overall played well, didn't really drop any passes, miss any opportunities. You run for 217. It's a perfect set of circumstances for a quarterback to thrive in. And while you could argue that Pickett played okay, a C-type game, to me, in that circumstance, you should be getting a much better performance from your quarterback whenever everything is working in a quarterback's favor.
Well, like going back to what we said, looking forward to more opportunities before this game against the Saints of him playing in a more even situation where, you're not down 10, 2 possessions or more. And he's had to do that quite a bit in second halves of games, obviously, here. And this whole game, he did not play from behind. Right. So that gives you a better kind of at least baseline of what he can do in even kill type situations. And this, I hate to keep circling this thing back. If he hits a couple of these, and look, I thought the out and up to you can question whether or not he should have went that way with the throw, if it was predetermined. Once again, we don't know, what the progression was, what he was looking for, what he was told maybe to throw in that situation. If he sees a certain thing, the out and up to Najee was, the ball placement is fantastic. Sure. Absolutely fantastic there. If he buries one of those, red zone trips, it makes the game look a lot better for him, I think.
Well, sure. I mean, if he converted chances, then it's going to look better. But did he do it or did he not?
No.
He didn't do it. And
that's why I say that's why my whole thing of things to look for with this kid right now, his accuracy's there. I mean, we knew that coming out, right? I mean, the guy's an accurate thrower. There's the two things, since he's really taken over here, that I think that we should focus on more than anything else right here. That's his ability to push the football down the field and complete those passes. And he's got to get better in the red zone. You do those two things, and I think the pocket presence. We've seen good pocket presence in some limited dropbacks with Kenny Pickett. Now there have been some bad ones on top of it there too, but we have seen the good. We've seen that he can do it. His decision making overall, not knowing the specifics about each play makes that kind of hard, hard to judge, obviously. But the things that we can kind of judge is pushing the football down the field with success and red zone production.
Yeah, I think red zone is one of the biggest things, if not the biggest thing, to look for with Pickett over the last 8 games of the season. I just, again, take an overall.
They've been moving the ball for the most part in the last couple of games, right?
Sure, but how many points they're still leaving points on the board to me overall, and a big part of that is ineffective red zone play. But again, bottom line is when you're 18 of 30 for $199, no touchdowns. He should have had a better stat line in a game where everything was working in his favor. Being at home, having the bye, facing a not a terrific opponent who is dealing with a ton of injuries. When you're running the ball super effectively, you should have a better output from your quarterback than what Pickett had.
Agreed.
And so I'm trying to raise the bar on that play.
And not every game you're going to run for 200 yards either, and hopefully you're not going to have him running for 50 yards in a game every game either.
Right. I mean, most of that was just him scrambling, just because stuff wasn't there, which is good and an asset and certainly one of the positives of this game. But I was trying to raise the bar and have a good litmus test here of, okay, I know a lot has gone wrong for Pickett this year. It's been a lot of tough circumstances. I can understand that, and it kind of muddies the context and the evaluation. But whenever things go right, how good is the performance? And to me, it really wasn't much better.
And you probably wrinkled some noses with, talking about kind of some of the self-scouting and things that Matt Canada did different this past week.
Yeah, I thought he called, a pretty good game overall. And again, when you run for 217, your OC typically looks pretty good because most things work. You stay on schedule, you get big explosive plays. But yeah, just some of the wrinkles in the screen game I thought were effective. The one to Steven Sims was the play I highlighted for a film room yesterday, and you could talk about some other calls as well. So again, I think the calls and the structure and the scheme has been better the last month or so. It's been more of execution errors, and hopefully this thing's trending in a right direction. All
right, now let me take the opportunity to circle this back to Ben and add another point to a topic or a point that he made there. Ben said that all along he thought that the game against the Saints would be the one after the bye that ended up being the Kenny Pickett debut, and kind of go from there. And Ben says, well, if they did what I would have suggested, then Kenny would be 1-0, 1-0 right now. My initial prediction was I thought the game after the bye was the most likely, was going to be the likeliest time that we see Kenny Pickett make his debut. It obviously was not, and you're not going to, you're not switching away from him. Nobody is suggesting go back to Trubisky and haven't been, or at least we haven't been since the day that they pulled the plug on Trubisky here. And I get why Ben's going that way, but I tend to look at it this way now. Okay. You would have been starting the clock on Pickett against the Saints. And he would have been able to sit all that time and learn that way. But learning that way versus being on the field and learning are obviously two different things. I guess the point I'm trying to make right now at this point is, okay, the introduction period now is behind us. All right. And, you're running the ball a little bit better here. You've got what appears to be a complementary defense on the other side of the football. Now, this to me right now, and a big game against the Bengals, the line in the sand was drawn now, in my opinion, after the Saints game. I think we can get a lot more critical moving forward at this point with Pickett.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And that's why I'm being more critical of Pickett in this game, because he has now played some football and you've seen, much better circumstances for him and for a quarterback to thrive in. So like I mentioned in my terrible take today, this is kind of the race the bar game for me with him going forward. Now with when he should have started, listen, I was wrong. I thought Pickett wouldn't touch the field until much later in the season. I thought they were going to really have a longer leash on Trubisky than people thought, but you get in a situation, you're just trying to battle, trying to win. You feel the pressure of the season. They make a change. So there you go. To Ben's point, I mean, I get what he's saying there, but Kenny Pickett's a much different quarterback now than what he was, I'm sure, the first time he appeared in a game. So would he have won? Would he have played the same way against the Saints had that been his first game as opposed to his fifth or sixth game or whatever it is? Who the heck knows? So it's easy to say that in hindsight, but I'm sure Pickett is a different quarterback. With some experience at his back, as opposed to hypothetically had that Saints game been his first career start.
Sure, better for it, right? More experience, right. And you can only learn so much sitting on the bench and film study every week. You know?
And I like my guys to learn by doing and to make mistakes and take their lumps. And when they're ready to play, you don't want to rush a guy. But to me, Pickett has always been basically ready to play since week one. And the sooner you can start those growing pains, the sooner you can leave those growing pains, and the sooner you find out who you have, what you have, and you can proceed from there.
Sure. And I'm not being hypercritical. That's just been trying to waved the checker flag there, I guess.
Yeah, we're all smarter for it in hindsight.
Right. But I think you got to look at it as is now where he's at. And once again, look at all those snaps he had to play from 10 to 14 snaps. It's really, you hope. My hope now is I'm drawing the line in the sand after the Saints game right now. And my hope is that we see him be able to play a lot more in one possession games, 80% of his snaps, hopefully 75 to 80% of his dropbacks happening in one possession games. And then, I want the line in the sand to be right here from the red zone production from how he's played up until now to how he plays the rest of the season to see a drastic improvement there. And the same goes with his ability to push the football down the field.
I'm with you. I think it's a good point. I think it's a good line in the sand to draw. But again, let's say against the Bengals, they fall back into their old ways of they play from behind, they're getting crushed, the run game sucks. I'm more willing to give Pickett or any quarterback a pass in those moments because I know it's a much tougher set of circumstances to play and to play well in. But to your point, hopefully they can play closer games so you can really get a better and cleaner and more confident feel in what Pickett is and what Pickett is not.
And look, if they're not in, or if a lot of Pickett's dropbacks from here on out are in situations where it's more than a one possession game, then did he cause it? You know what I'm saying?
True. Fair.
If the defense is causing it, well, then obviously that's one thing. But if he's turning the football over in short fields and those kind of things, then in other words, we're going to have to take this on a game by game basis here. But at least that's my hope is we'll see him play at least 75 to 80% of his snaps moving forward in situations where it's one possession game.
I agree. But just final thoughts with Pickett, took care of the football better in the second half than the first half, but just given everything that surrounded him, I was expecting and wanting more from him watching back this game.
Okay. I agree. I thought it was like a C+ performance.
I would go worse than that, not to split hairs, but I think it's probably a C- type of game. I mean, you do feel him, and I might do a video on this. I can see the wheels churning. He's facing some of those third and long situations, and he's seeing all this some pressure, and he's trying to get ahead of it. The first time they use it, there's no hot route. He gets sacked. The second time, he tries to go with a rub route. He's got to come up with a new signal. His signal for the rub route is pretty clear. He's rubbing his hands together, and that's just telling the receivers to kind of run a rub route. The second time he does it, the Saints drop out. They only rush 3 and doesn't know where to go with the football. And so he's just kind of, he sees it. He's understanding it. He's just still kind of one step behind as he's trying to catch up to defenses.
He's got to be, his decision-making's got to come more natural instead of him having to think that second.
Yeah, I would just say I think dealing with post-snap rotations and post-snap adjustments, he's still working on and working through, which is typical for a rookie quarterback, and he's a smart guy. But I think whenever he has to see a different picture post-snap, he's struggling a bit. For example, on that throw to Freiermuth, play action, doesn't see the linebacker running underneath to cover and take away and double Freiermuth on the crosser. Stuff like that, things he's got to be able to recognize whenever that picture changes.
Okay, agreed.
What else from all 22 from this game, Dave? Kind of getting a broader view of this offense or this defense kind of caught your attention going back through the tape.
All right, takeaways from all 22. First overall note that I have is I'm not so sure TJ Watt shouldn't be in the running for defensive player.
That's what Brian McFadden said today.
of the year. Lord have mercy. Why do people try to block him with a tight end, number one? Number two, that guy is so impactful. And once again, it goes back to some of the things that you showed with the way the protections being slid. There were probably 5 times in this game where he almost got his hands on the football, I think. And in fact, one of those, I think he did. It's so hard to tell from the all 22 view on that one that kind of fluttered out to Andy Dalton's right side over there. He's going to get his hands on some of these balls at some point moving forward there. Stat line wise, was it a huge stat line game for him? No, but it opened up things across the defensive line, really the whole defense as a whole. If you want a good illustration of Russian coverage working hand in hand, I think it's you look at that game overall there. I don't think we praised Montravius Adams play enough coming out of the TV tape. I really thought he put some good snaps down in that game. I thought Devin Bush did a couple of nice things that need look. No one's been as you praise any of these guys sometimes on Twitter out of the blue with one snap, and people always want to relate that to, it was still a mistake that they traded up for him. Oh yeah, of course it is. But if you're going to be very critical of a guy, and especially as critical as I have been of Devin Bush, then it's only fair when you see things that he's been lacking in show up on tape to point them out, right? It's what we do. It's what has made Steelers Depot. It's something you and I talk about occasionally, making sure we're being objective about certain things. It's things that we pass along to our contributors as well too. What does the tape say? Forget what your previous narratives or analysis might be. I thought there was a couple of things with him getting closer to the line of scrimmage and taking on some blockers. I thought was good. Robert Spillane going to be a liability in coverage. Yes, there's no doubt about that. But that guy plays downhill very well, right?
Yeah, I think he's a smart guy. He's a physical guy. And I think him and this defense overall just had really strong, clean communication in this game, really working in sync, very few blown assignments. I think Wallace screwed up his job on that touchdown to Juwan Johnson. But other than that, you saw this team really work together as a unit, not make mistakes, be really solid with their run fills. And that's important when you're facing a guy like Taysom Hill to be really gap sound and fundamental. And this team was they tackled well. They weren't highly penalized. They played well situationally. They played together as a unit. And I thought Spillane is part of that hub of communication.
DeMonte Casey, the interception aside, I thought there were some snaps where you can't help but notice him on the field. One of those instances, I think, was a screen over to the left side. And he just, he moves really good from recognition from point A to point B. And then even on one of those I think on a crosser that was completed over the middle, I think it was a cover 3 type situation. And I think it was on an inside dig from right to left. They completed a pass, but he was right there, very reliable tackler. And that goes back to something that we pointed out during the preseason that had us so excited about him. He looked for the time that he had missed in this thing. The train didn't get too far away from him. He looked very, very comfortable, I thought, overall in the defense. And just overall, I think the rushing coverage aspect of it really played a huge part in this game, caused Andy Dalton to get rid of the football quick on the one attempt Taysom Hill had, or did he have 2 attempts? I forget, but one of those, he didn't want no part of TJ Watt being in his face, and that kind of maybe forced a quick release over there. My take, one of my biggest takeaways overall was, man, might we see this defense, if they get all these guys on the field, be a totally different looking defense? Because look, they didn't have Minkah in this game. They didn't have Miles Jack in this game, and they still seemed like they played very, very fast overall. And I wonder now how, what's the second half going to look like, compared to the first half, not only against the run, but from the explosive play component as well too. And yeah, this is a Saints team that was missing, quite a few players and all like that. But this was also a Saints team, I think, that was around the middle of the league in explosive plays. We talked about the Steelers defense being horrible in explosive plays in the first half of the season. I just got the sense that they were really clicking on the defensive side of football in this game against the Saints.
And we've seen glimpses of what this team can do when they're all together week 1 against the Bengals. I mean, they played an amazing, incredible, game. They had 7 sacks and 5 turnovers forced in that game. So, I mean, hopefully whenever this group comes back together, maybe as soon as this weekend in the rematch against the Bengals, they can really be, a top 5 type unit in the NFL. But, I thought Casey, as you said, if you didn't know any better, you wouldn't have thought this was his first game of the season and basically the first full game he's played since 2021. In the preseason, you're only playing portions of those games and things like that. I wonder if I know I'm kind of going out on a limb here. That first week of training camp when Casey ran first team when Minkah was on NFI with the wrist injury, I wonder if that just kind of helped him a little bit to really kind of work first team at the onset of the summer and kind of carry some of that over into his game against the Saints on Sunday. Just a lot of energy from this defense. TJ Watt, high energy. Demonte Casey, high energy. Millette, high energy. Cam Sutton, high energy guy. And I think really people feed off that when you're at home. The crowd gets into it. Some of those intangible things that you really can't quantify, but you felt the presence and the energy. And even on the All-22 that has no audio, you could still sense the momentum and the confidence and the swagger this defense had.
They played fast, didn't they?
They did. And again, that goes back to TJ Watt simplifying this defense. Let me pull up the charting here. I need to write about this, but let me just try to do this here really quickly because they didn't have all the personnel packages and all this crazy grouping and stuff like that. In this game, they ran 3-4, 3-4 over, dime, nickel, and big nickel. And that was all their packages. And really, in terms of just the very nuts and bolts of football, base 3-4, dime, and nickel, they used that on 46 of the 49 snaps. And so they weren't having to rotate in people. They were just playing their guys, playing fast, playing physical. And that is at its core Steelers football.
Absolutely. And they're not going to have to get too exotic with the personnel groupings, I don't think, going forward.
Right. They don't have to do all this crazy 3 linebacker packages, and we're going to run 3-3-5, and then we're going to rotate these guys and shuffle people on and off, and no one's in a rhythm, and you're not sure who's coming on and who's coming off, and trying to, win everything so perfectly schematically. I think that might be, I've written that article last week, the hidden benefit of TJ Watt's return. I think, truthfully, Dave, that might be the biggest benefit of them all, to simplify this defense, simplify the scheme, rush 4, drop 7, let your guys make plays. You get Minkah back within a week or two. That's going to even make that job easier.
One thing that stuck out, the tackling really looked good. I can't wait. When does Josh's tackle report go out? Today?
Should be today or tomorrow. It should be pretty light work. As you said, it feels like not
4 or 5 missed tackles, I think. Not many in this game. And once again, you go back, you look at the yards after catch numbers, the Steelers right at, I think, doubled them in Yak on about the same. What was it, like 17 completions for one side and 18 for the other there. So they did a good job of tackling the catch when those things were completed in front of them.
Definitely. That's my overall thoughts on the defense. Again, situationally, 1 on 3rd down put the Saints in a lot of 3rd, and I think 9 of their 12 third downs were 3rd and 7 plus, and so those are great situations to win in, obviously. And so you're winning on early downs, so you can win on late downs. That's to me the overall thought. And then Alex Highsmith, Josh does have a film room coming up soon on Alex Highsmith, probably posted by the time people listen to this podcast. And Highsmith's pass rush plan is football IQ, and then finding the football, finishing plays. That's where he's really elevated his game this year. Last year, missing opportunities. This year, he's finishing the chances that he creates for himself.
All right, good analysis.
Flipping over to the offense, what are your thoughts there? What was the biggest difference for this run game to succeed? I don't know if things felt dramatically different in terms of what they did. It just felt like, and this is a very obvious thing to say, but the execution of it was just much better.
Yeah, schematically it didn't seem like really much anything new within that. Just you had Najee in particular made I thought some very nice reads, and in instances in the past where he'd get 1 or 2 yards, he was getting 4 or 5 yards. And even though the success rates overall weren't where you want them to be, what did I say? His was like 48%, something like that overall. It was obviously a better performance. He was the best running back on the field overall in that game Sunday. And the explosive play obviously was nice to see. There are a lot more, more successful runs overall in that. And I think one of the things that I hate to go back to, even though you don't want to make a habit of it, how impactful were those scrambles by Kenny Pickett?
Yeah, I mean, they were impactful. He had 23-yard rushes, and when things weren't there, and that is the benefit of quarterback mobility, things that obviously you have not had in Pittsburgh in quite some time. That's an extra element, and there is pros and cons to it, where I think sometimes Pickett tries to run and do a little too much or is too quick to pull the football down, but it certainly can and has been an asset for him and for this offense.
And people won't want to hear it, but the Saints certainly helped the Steelers' cause on offense.
With all the penalties you're talking about?
Yeah.
I mean, for sure. But you take him, and I mean, there were 6 first downs because of penalty in this game. But the Steeler fans, you take whatever you can get to get this offense, better.
And just, going back to what we've said, kind of a punctuation on it, that it feels like they have been moving the football down the field more. Got to see him, start cashing in some more of these points. We need to see the points on the scoreboard get up over 25 a week, 24 or 25 a week now.
Sure, definitely. I thought Jaylen Warren was his typical self, running hard. They did have him on the field in Wildcat situations, so I don't know if you consider that pony or not, but the 2 Wildcat plays had both Harris as the Wildcat quarterback and Jaylen Warren on the field, so that's an interesting add-on to that package. The O-line, I think I was a little too critical of Dan Moore immediately leaving this game, watching back through the tape. I think there were a couple of bad reps, and whenever you're an O-lineman that has a couple of bad reps, those tend to get magnified. But his progression and his growth overall has been really impressive. That snatch and trap he was using in this game was really effective. His pass pro overall, I think some stunt pickup. There's some work to be done there for this team, not just him, but the whole line. But I think technically he's a much better player, and I think truthfully has really benefited from the teaching of Pat Meyer.
Let's see what happens against the Bengals.
True. That's a fair point. With Davenport being out, that certainly helps a guy like Moore in this game. Kevin Dotson, what are your thoughts on Dotson? He's a talented guy, but he is just so frustrating for me to watch. He's, I think, the most frustrating player to watch on this offense. Maybe this whole team.
Recognition on some stuff more than I think part of not anticipating and picking up things with a crasher going, and some of these stunts, he's got to get better on these stunts.
Yeah, I know some of the plays you're talking about. I know that the Saints like to have their nose tackle head up over the center as a true zero tech in some passing situations, and I don't know if they were trying to get Dotson to slide to Cole to help him out in some of those moments, but there are times where Dotson really has to go find work. I mean, James Daniels does a really good job of finding work and cleaning guys up and helping out centers and tackles. Dotson is just very much playing into space and doesn't want to move too much, and he's missing some stuff. So I don't know. Some of it might look a little bit worse than it actually is if you look at the schematics of it. But yeah, I think Dotson he does not play to Pat Meyer's rules. From what I know about Pat Meyer and how he teaches pass pro, Kevin Dotson does none of what Pat Meyer teaches in terms of helping tackles when the center's sliding to you, in terms of his pass sets backing up. He's a talented player, and he can get away with that talent sometimes. And when it comes together, it looks good, and his run blocking can get a push, but he's just kind of a mess of a player. I
think he relies a little bit. He was such a mauler, right?
Yeah.
At Louisiana Lafayette that he's been able to get by, before the NFL as being more of I'm because of the class of people I'm going against, I'm the best offensive lineman on the field. But when you get to a more even playing field, being a mauler will only get you so far. His technique's he's got to start becoming more of a technician, and he's yet to do that.
Yeah, he doubles over. He's pretty heavy waist bender. And then there was one snap that I saw, just one random one. I don't think it was even a bad rep if you just watched it without really looking at the teachings, but it's an off-body set. You're supposed to set flat to that, and Dawson's backing up. He's giving ground. I mean, 101 for Pat Meyer is be aggressive with your sets. Do not back up. Do not give ground. And Dawson does that. And that's just, again, not playing to the rules of how this line is being taught.
He's reached proven performance escalator phase 1, level 1. So he's going to get a raise next year.
I think if I'm going to start anywhere to fix this offensive line or improve this offensive line, I'm starting at left guard. Would you agree?
Yeah. Excuse me.
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to catch you mid-cough there.
Swallowed wrong there. Guard or center. I think I've kind of.
Well, I think Cole's been better than Dotson. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah, Cole's been more consistent. Okay. Yeah, sure. And I think snap for snap, better player. Yes.
Okay, so I think. How do you feel about Dan Moore at left tackle? What are your thoughts? Is he the answer? Do you look for an upgrade there? How do you approach left tackle?
Come talk to me after this Bengals game.
Fair point.
And after the Ravens game, or games. There's a couple of good litmus tests coming up for this offensive line.
Any other thoughts on the all-22 in this game, Dave?
I think you hit. It's good to see the slants and all like that. It's good to see, some of the stuff that you pointed out schematically with them, more kind of misdirection with the guards and stuff like that.
Yeah, Pittsburgh, they're watching the NFL. They were doing some of the stuff the Eagles do where they'll start pistol and then they move the running back late sidecar to kind of hide where the run's going. And so they're watching, they're picking up stuff. They're doing the quarterback sneak pusher that the Eagles kind of started, and they did that against Miami. So you can kind of see them borrow quote unquote stuff from other teams. I thought George Pickens, not that his numbers were super gaudy, but I thought he played well because he was able to make an impact without being the vertical, big play, go up there and get it guy. He ran comebacks. He ran slants for third down conversions. He had the touchdown run, which was a great job to kind of find the end zone and kind of go off script a little bit, but, make the play. Had that big 22-yard run left side. So I was really encouraged to see Pickens make plays that didn't always rely on him winning the 50-50 ball downfield.
All right, fair enough.
All right, I think that probably covers it well.
I'm ready to see a 60-yard touchdown for him.
I am too, but I don't want him to be solely, a one-trick pony of I'm going to either win the deep ball in this game and have a great game or not get my chance or miss out on my chance and have a dud. I think he needs to be a more well-rounded guy, and you saw, I think, some progress towards that against the Saints. All right. I think that probably covers it pretty well. So let's get to some. Am I missing anything? Anything we should be covering before?
Let's see. We hit Color Rush. Did we hit all the newsworthy stuff?
I mean, he kind of felt compelled to write about it, but Aditi Kinkhabwala in a 8 a.m. tweet, kind of bearing the lead there, saying that in her reporting, I guess, whatever you want to call it, Mike Tomlin was very, very close to moving to TV a few years ago, but he's not going now. So I don't know what to do with that information, but that is information.
I mean, as much as that guy loves football and likes the process and all like that, even back a few years ago, I would need more proof of something, I think. Look, anything's impossible. You don't know what goes on inside somebody's head from a week to week, year to year basis and all. But as much as this guy professes to love the game and the people and the process, with him still being fairly young, it's hard to imagine him being happy not doing what he's doing.
Right. Yeah. So I don't know what to make of it. I'd love to know how a few years ago. I wonder if this is true or has any sort of truth to it. Was this right before his kids started going to college? Maybe that was whenever Tom was kind of thinking, oh, should I, maybe spend more time with my kids when they're going to college? I don't know. But I mean, it's, didn't happen if it ever even came close to happening, and Tomlin's the head coach, and that's all that really matters.
All right. To the email machine, Jim Bendis. Theoretical question: how many superstars you need on a team to win a championship? He says, with all the TJ Watt on the field, all of a sudden the defense looks great. Everyone is making plays now. There's excitement on the field at a different level. One, can this is this what happens when you have a superstar on the field that makes everyone play at a higher level? As Craig Wolfley will call it, a multiplier. Then I look to Green Bay, where Aaron Rodgers without Devontae Adams makes Aaron Rodgers look like an average quarterback, though he is not clicking with the Raiders now. Then look at Von Miller, Buffalo. That defense looks good in games I saw, but all of a sudden the LA Rams defense does not look as good. We can go on with the Troy Bettis, blah, 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 but the point is you need these superstars or force multipliers on your team if you want to win a championship. I was talking with a friend yesterday on how many you need. My friend tells me 3, 1 on defense and 2 on offense. He has quarterback or running back or a wide receiver. That sounds about right, but I'm thinking 2 would be due to trick as well, depending on who they are, blah, blah, blah. Sometimes it could be a combination. Okay, so what are your thoughts on superstars needed? Mike Tomlin, in so many words, what was his quote on, man, I got a heartburn bad this morning. What was his quote on having stars and all like that? He was asked about, can you quantify the emotional impact TJ Watt had just by being back out there and maybe schematically by using up an extra guy all the time? And Thomas says, yeah, you can't. There's an intangible quality to players like him. They do. They bring more than the presence of their playmaking. They instill confidence in those around them. So that is a very real thing. You can't necessarily measure it, but if somebody, but as somebody who has been in this business, I acknowledge that is real. And then he was asked, how many of those guys have you had since you've been a coach? He says, thankfully, I've been around a few. Chances are you're not going to have good units unless you've had a few. I've been a part of some good defenses, man, in my adulthood since I've been at this level. So I've had the pleasure of being around some significant dudes, some defensive player of the year type guys. It's been an honor. Yeah, I think it goes without saying you need probably on each side of the ball one of these top players in the NFL. I think that's an obvious thing there. I guess the question becomes is how many do you need? On a defensive side of football, I think everybody would consider Watt and Minkah a top tier player, right?
Sure, I do at least. I'm sure most Steeler fans would agree. I think it's an interesting point. I think that certainly you're quick to rag on players or coaches or teams when they lose star players and suddenly they're not as good, which is, should be expected. They're trying to adjust after playing with a star player for so long, and all the change that comes with that. You become comfortable and accustomed to having that star player that solves a lot of problems and makes a lot of plays and bails your team out. And, for coaches, the old saying is it's not about the X's and the O's, it's the Jimmy and the Joes. And so you got to have those star players. And most, rarely do you see, Super Bowl teams win without some star player to some degree. That's why Tom Brady has a whole bunch of rings on his finger right now. And you see even Belichick struggle in that post Brady era. How many do you need? I don't know. The more the merrier. You get as many as you can, I guess is the answer. But yeah, I'd probably say at least 2 or 3.
I mean, look at the Rams last year, right? I mean, that's the most, the easiest example. Cooper Kupp, right? That guy's a top tier player in the NFL.
Yeah, and then of course Aaron Donald shutting that game down.
And as he mentioned, Von Miller last year.
Yep.
I mean, that's 3. Anybody else that quickly Whitworth? They had.
Yeah,
Whitworth.
I was going to mention him. Yeah, a great left tackle. Great conversation he had with Cam Hayward, by the way, on the podcast yesterday.
Anybody else that you would from that championship team last year that you would term a top tier player?
I mean, Jalen Ramsey at his best is that caliber guy. His play's been a little more hot and cold, but I mean, bottom line is it's Aaron Donald, it's Cooper Kupp, it's Von Miller, kind of the core guys.
Right. So three or more. Is that a rough, fair answer for Jim Bendis?
I mean, you'd have to go through the other Super Bowl teams over the last decade or so and see, but it depends on what position they play. You got with a star quarterback, he can help you a whole lot more than if you have, say, a star running back and a star, right guard, so the weightiness of the position probably matters as well.
All right. Jason Council writes in, hey, Dave and Alex, this is my first time sending in a question to the show, but I've listened to every episode for close to 2 years, ever since that ugly Bengals loss during the 2020 season, and I wanted to find some answers for why. LOL. Anyway, I think I don't think Jason completed his email here. I don't know if there's a question in there.
May just be a comment about that's when he started listening. Okay. So thank you. What a heck of a time to start. But I really like that somebody started listening, wanting to solve. That's kind of what we're all about, is trying to explain the why. And so appreciate you starting that journey after that ugly game.
Agreed. Alex Campbell writes in, hi guys, quick question. You have both spoken about the Steelers need to acquire a capable third outside linebacker edge rusher to rotate with TJ and Highsmith. Can DeMarvin Leal not be that third guy? When TJ went down, DeMarvin was playing that spot a lot and looked pretty solid. So is it possible that the plan for him is to be that third edge long term rather than him playing more of an inside defensive line spot? Just thinking, as it would be nice to not have to use an early pick on an edge with many other roster needs. My initial thought on this is it was nice that DeMarvin Leal was able to offer that to you kind of as a quasi edge, down lineman, but to maximize what DeMarvin Leal, I think, can do well is to one gap penetrate, period. And can you occasionally use him in the role that we saw him play some when TJ was down? Absolutely. But I don't think you hang your hat on that with him being the third edge guy. Yeah,
I'm with you. That felt a bit more break glass in case of emergency. Don't have a lot of other options. We got to get really creative here. I mean, Leal, I thought, played pretty well overall. He's still got a lot of work to do on who he is as a pass rusher. Like, what is his pass rush move? I have no idea. I don't think he recorded a single pressure, according to my charting, in the games in which he played. And although Pittsburgh doesn't drop their guys into coverage much anymore, they still occasionally will walk guys out against twin receiver sets or empty formations, where you're going to have to really play those guys in extreme space. And those aren't things that Leal will be capable of doing. So, no, I don't think Leal is the answer, short answer.
Bryce wants to know, to build off of Sunday's game, should the Steelers start to incorporate more 21 personnel out of pistol like the Ravens do with their fullback and use Freiermuth detached from the line, or bring in Sims as a slot? This would still allow them to use some motion, run downhill, and create easier reads for Kenny to help him see the field. First and foremost, they got a great who's it, Ricard over there in their 21 personnel. That's you want to talk about a guy that can do it all. That guy. And second of all, Lamar Jackson just adds an element. I mean, as mobile as Kenny Pickett is, man, you got to be careful with Lamar on more design runs. We talked about earlier in the show, design runs. They obviously do that with him. I think 21 personnel has its place for sure, but I don't think and out of the pistol, I guess, Alex has always been a big fan of using more pistol, I think. Right, Alex?
I am, but less so with 21 and Derek Watt being on the field. I don't really want to see him out there a whole lot. I get what you're saying, but I think you're spot on, Dave. The Ravens offense is so unique. They have such a unique quarterback that allows them to be so multiple with the run game. They do it a lot more with the designed run game stuff. It's not going to work the same way when Derek Watt's trying to be Ricard and Kenny Pickett trying to be Lamar. So, I probably wouldn't go for that.
When you talk about identity with them, this is with the Ravens, you talk about a team that can run the football and has a mobile quarterback. And then they utilize their tight ends in the passing game off of that very, very well. And then there's the element of when they do need to take a deep shot, they have some guys that they can make that happen with. The Steelers aren't at that any close to that identity yet. Question number 2. When
I was going to say, I think you're 100% right about that. I think identity, such like if you're going to be that kind of offense, you got to commit hard to that. And that's what the Ravens like. If you're going to run the wing T, you can't sprinkle that in. You're a wing T offense, or you're not running it at all. And I think you're 100% right that if you're going to be that kind of team, you're going to be all in. And Pittsburgh does not have the weaponry to be all in like that. Look,
we want to see this just. We want this team right now to show us an identity of some sort, maybe in the second half of the season when it comes to the Steelers. Number 2, when Minkah comes back and the team has a full range of using him, Casey and Norwood, it makes sense to use Edmonds in the splaying role for the dime defense.
Well, in your dime defense, you can have all those three safeties on the field if you wanted to. There's nothing actually stopping you. You're going to have one inside linebacker on the field. And like I said, in the Saints game, Edmonds was used as kind of a traditional dime linebacker where he played really close to the line of scrimmage. They occasionally were bailing him to rotate and play deep third, but they kind of used him more in that role, which has been uncommon for what they've done the last couple of years or last year or two. So there's still going to be an inside backer on the field, but we'll see how they use them. There'll be multiple. They'll have flexibility, and that's a good thing. Yeah,
I'm excited to see what they're able to do in some of these big nickel type, or dime type situations here. And that's why I'm really hoping to get Minkah back, because you could get uber creative here, I think. And you don't know which one of those guys are going to rotate.
Yeah, and against a team like Baltimore, again, a tight end heavy team, that's really important. And when you're facing Lamar and a running threat at quarterback, a guy like Casey could be a really strong answer to a lot of the versatility the Ravens offense offers. So I'm excited to see that used forward.
Right, and I wouldn't expect to see much of Norwood if you got these guys all healthy, right?
Yeah, he's kind of fallen out of favor in this defense, and certainly he's not going to be that big nickel type of safety because his tackling still is not where it needs to. It's a bit better, but not at Casey's level.
And I think we mentioned this the other day. You expect, once they get these, hopefully if these guys can all stay forward, you would expect to see Spillane a little bit less.
Right, he was playing because of the jack injury, but again, zero of that three inside linebacker package, maybe even part a bit due to the injury to Miles Jack. But I was just thinking, by the way, I guess the question that I had posed last week about over-under on Casey snaps, I guess hopefully he took the over on that one because ended up starting, but we'll see how Casey gets used whenever that group gets healthy.
I won't hold that against you.
Yeah, that was my Friday Five. I'm getting really good at asking questions in the Friday Five that become obvious answers by the time people start answering them.
Todd, let's end with this one from Todd Jitzler. Dave, you always say it takes at least 20 games to determine how a quarterback is progressing throughout his professional career. My question is Kenny Pickett progressing at a normal rate, in your opinion, this early into his career? It seems to me like he might be regressing a little bit. He locks in on his first read. He gets happy feet in the pocket. He misses wide open throws and also misses receivers streaking down the field who are wide open. I know this will probably get a lot of heat and negative reaction, but I was just curious how you thought he was at this stage. I still think it would have been better to let him sit for a while before bringing him in as early as they did against the Jets. There's no turning back. At what point will we know if he's the answer? I think that's the thing that everybody wants to know. That's why you get the instant analysis of, oh, he stinks, or the other people saying, oh, give him time. That's me adding that in there. He says, I think it will be a couple of years at least, Todd writes. He says, is he where you thought he would be? Is he trending up or down? And finally, do you think playing now could hinder his development? Thanks, best podcast out there, objective and honest. This goes back, Todd, to what I said, when we talk about Pickett earlier in the show. First and foremost, my where I thought Kenny would be at in his career at this point right now would be coming off of his first start. So that's where I envision Kenny being at right now. Now, obviously that didn't happen. Based on where he is right now, I still think it's too early to call this. And a lot of that too I hate to be a broken record, is going back to how much he's had to play from behind here. I think it's very fair what Alex and I did, and I'm assuming Alex agrees wholeheartedly with me what we said. I think after this Saints game right now is the perfect time to draw the official line in the sand with him, and allow ourselves to be a little bit more hypercritical of his play moving forward into this season. And look back at red zone, look back at throwing the football down the field, and look back at pocket presence and taking some of these sacks here. Is he where it's so hard to answer. Is he where I thought he would be at? Because I didn't think he'd be playing up until now. And the game experience is a game experience right now. So it's really hard to answer that of where I thought he'd be in his professional career, because I didn't envision him having to play until after the bye week.
Yeah, I feel like his progression. I get the reader question in the comment of it feels like maybe there's been some regression. I would have liked to see some more improvement, especially coming off this game where, as I've mentioned, everything seemed to go right around Pickett for him to play better. But sometimes that can be tough to look into that window and how he's preparing and is he answering questions better and quicker and things like that. I see him working. I see him being able to understand what defenses are doing. So it just depends on what specific aspect of the game in terms of progression that you're talking about. We'll just keep watching and just keep seeing. And, I'll wait for the season to end and look at it in totality and go from there.
Has his pocket presence regressed?
I don't think it's improved the way that I hope that it would, but it's still early. And I understand for a lot of young quarterbacks who are mobile, they want to run and their instinct is to run because it worked for them in high school and it worked for them in college when they were generally among the best athletes on the field. So I understand that that's probably one of those things that's not uncommon to him, the way it is for a lot of rookie quarterbacks. I remember Mason Rudolph, who obviously is not the athlete that Pickett is, but his pocket presence was a wreck, in his early days in Pittsburgh, and that improved. So, I think it's not where it needs to be, but it can get better.
I guess another question to throw on top of this is where have you seen the biggest gains in Pickett's play from snap one to through the Saints game?
It's a good question. I don't know if I have a perfect answer for you yet.
I don't have a perfect answer for you there.
But I'm not necessarily searching that out specifically when I go through the tape, because you're just looking at so much and you're just kind of prisoner of the moment to some degree. So maybe if I just after the season went back and just watched his snaps all the way through, you might reveal some of that stuff a bit clearer. Again, I think the moment's not been too big for him. I think his leadership has grown. I think he's really kind of taken charge of this team and held guys accountable and not been afraid to just even say some of that stuff publicly. So I appreciate that. I think his overall accuracy has been good. I think trying to make some pre-snap adjustments and trying to play the chess game, although I think he's still one step behind, but trying to adjust to what defenses are doing, anticipate things, learn from mistakes. You have seen some signs there. So again, just going to keep watching, keep evaluating, analyzing, not concluding.
And once again, I think, I think this is a perfect line in the sand for him right here now, especially with a big game. Look, this was my terrible take yesterday, right? This is put up or shut up time right now. There's probably not many people other than just flat out full blown optimists, that think their team can do no wrong, that think this team's going to make the playoffs, right?
Sure. But to the point about go ahead.
But go ahead.
Well, I was going to say just about the line in the sand. I mean, again, if this offense can't run the ball and they get behind and they're losing 35-10 at halftime, like they did last year, it's going to be hard to evaluate Pickett. So I'm just hoping they're in better circumstances to have a cleaner and more confident evaluation of him. So I can't guarantee that every game going forward is going to be perfectly set up to better evaluate Kenny Pickett.
All right. My butt is, why I'm so excited for the second half, at least ahead of Sunday's game, is if this defense can stay healthy now, they should be in every one of these games, right? Every one of them.
They should. We'll see, but they should.
And a good 4 or 5 of them, if they're healthy, you would think they're going to have a really better we ought to see them favored in a few of these games, right?
Yeah, you'd imagine Colts, Carolina, Raiders. You'd like to think that, but it'll be close lines, I guess.
If they beat the Bengals on Sunday, is it okay to think about a slight possibility of this team sneaking into the playoffs?
It'll become a conversation for sure. I mean, they'll still be 4-6.
A justifiable one, right? Or no?
It'll become a potential one that's worth talking about, one that you could start trying to build the case. So it'll still be a ways out, but that's when the conversation will become, not crazy talk.
However, if they lose the game to the Bengals, then it becomes we just checking off the games until find out the draft order, right?
Exactly. You're 3-7, and then that's officially done so.
And then, obviously it doesn't give them a pass just because you got 2 games against the Ravens still, and obviously the games outside of the division, which, most of them seem very winnable if you ask me. Now the Raiders, they're a Jekyll and Hyde team. They've been in all but 1 game this year. So, but anyway, Todd, I mean, look, and I say just 20 games because in the past I have tried to judge other quarterbacks prior to that, and you learn from your mistakes. You learn to give it time to watch as many snaps as possible through about a season and almost a season and a quarter there to get a good gauge on things. Look, Joe Burrow, early on until he got chased for sure. His rookie season was obviously he was hurt and all like that, but there wasn't a lot of positive, especially with the deep ball. You get him a guy that can get downfield and he starts figuring out some things. And then now all of a sudden he's a guy that you worry about. Man, that guy can home run you, right?
Right. Yeah. Circumstances can change quickly. So, we'll just keep, like I say, I know I sound like a broken record, but I just want to keep evaluating, watching this guy, and I'll have more concluding thoughts after the whole season ends, because Pickett might have an amazing performance against the Bengals and we have a whole different conversation. He might suck against the Bengals, we might have a different conversation. So these things can change so much week to week that I don't want to start, cementing things too much, because I know that 8 games is an eternity in the NFL.
All right, I think we're about the halfway or an hour and a half in here, so probably
halfway point. We're just getting started. Yeah.
Well, you don't have to twist my arm to go longer, but I think good stopping point here. Okay, folks, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. We hope to have our buddy Paul Daner Jr. on the show on Friday talking Steelers versus Bengals. We'll obviously have injury reports to go over and all the normal stuff that we try to fit into a Friday show there. So if you'd like to donate, go to SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate button up right navigational bar. Also, if you'd like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com, hit the ad-free button up right navigational bar. So until Friday, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.